Hello, and welcome to ShopTalk, the podcast built to unlock union strength through collaborative discussion. Our aim is to have a naturally flowing conversation on relevant union issues, events, and topics. For our first series, each episode will be a dialogue with this year's election candidates. We will strive to cover enough topic areas to give voters a sense of who the guests are as individuals and who they will be as union leaders. Thank you for joining.
Hello and welcome to Shop Talk. I'm your co-host, Frank Perry.
And I'm your co-host, Robert Bays.
Well, today we're here to have a conversation with Ron Rosson. Ron is a local 1000 steward from DLC 746, and he's running for DLC president. DLC 746 covers parts of Oakland, Richmond, Concord, and Pittsburgh. Ron has been a member of SEIU 1000 since 2006, and he's been a hardworking steward since 2016. He's currently a civil servant for the California Department of Public Health, and he's a member of the Bargaining Unit 17. We're happy to have him join us for our first episode. So welcome, Ron.
Oh, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Ron. Yeah, we want to start off. We want to start the conversation off by having you dig deep into your memory banks. Think back as far as you can, as early as you can. And we want to start by kind of starting the conversation on when's the first interaction or the first time you learned what a union was or understood what collective bargaining was.
Whoa. Okay, so coming from Florida, where we have no unions pretty much, came to California in 2005 for a nursing contract. And my first contract was at UCSF Medical Center. And I was on a night shift, and they were like, oh, you get to have a resource nurse. Oh, you get to have a break nurse. You have to, all the stuff we didn't have when I was doing nursing in Florida. So I was like, how did you guys get all this? Oh, we're unionized. Yeah, okay. So my first kind of, and then coming in the, cut to being part of Kaiser, being in management, and being on the other side of it, where we had to call the union if we wanted to discipline any employees or meet and confer. But then coming in the state service in 2006, then at San Quentin, we had a few issues there, and the stewards wasn't so, at that time, astute. So that's when the interaction where I learned what the union should have been doing, and through the MRC and the URC. So,
wow. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you say you come from Florida where there is no union. So you didn't really hear much about unions growing up. You didn't really have talks in your household about unionization or hear anything in the.
No, I heard a lot of disgruntled family members talking about how crappy their job situation was, and they couldn't do nothing about it.
That's right. Yeah.
And so coming here, that's, it's probably why I'm here how many years later, and didn't go back after a 3-month contract. I was only supposed to be in California 3 months. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you came from Florida. And you had a contract for 3 months, and then what? So what made you stay?
Well, I mean, the work conditions here versus Florida, it was attractive. I'm a man of faith, so I just believe God was, realigning my life totally to just putting me in a different place. But the attraction to better work conditions definitely made the move a little more easy and more attractive for me. Yeah, easy to do, easier to do, shall I say? Yeah.
So how did you find yourself coming on with the state? Tell us about that, when that journey first started.
How on with the state? How did I? You know, what I mean, how did I join the state, or how did I hear about the state, or what? What's that?
Both, yeah.
Yeah,
How that journey started.
okay, so I was in a church at the time where most of my choir members worked for the state in some capacity or another, and I was working for Kaiser, and I won't say on this podcast, but through just communications, they were like, "Hey, you should come and join the state. We have good benefits. We have," they made it. They did the whole pitch. And from there, I applied during the time that San Quentin was going under federal receivership. And I was, a nurse hired into that situation where, they were trying to hire more nurses with current skills out of the private sector and not nurses that had been there years and years and were complacent with protocols or whatever. They were trying to make work health conditions better for the inmates. So I was one of the nurses hired there in the triage and treatment area that's called TTA in the emergency room there at San Quentin. And so that's how I became a state employee. Yeah.
What year was that?
06.
06. So we see that you also became a member in 2006. So what about why was it immediately apparent to you that you needed to join the union as soon as you got into state service?
Well, at that time, remember, we were not under Janus, so even if it was fair share, what did we call it at that time? Fair share or whatever. Yeah. So you were almost, there was only a dollar, a dollar between being a member and not being a member. But I would have joined anyway because, like I told you, I appreciated the having that advocacy, that representation, that safety net of what a union promises us they'll be for us. What a union promises us they'll be for us. That advocate, that group, kind of in the fraternity, and working in the prison system where most of the guards are with the CPPOA. Union talk is, and I think in that system, it's more talked about in almost day-to-day activity. You come to work and they're like, "Oh, you're the new kid. This is seniority." And it's like post and bid and this and that and whatever. It was so unionized because even to get a position on a worker shift, if I wanted to work an overtime shift, if somebody more senior than me wanted to work that overtime shift, I said, "How do you get to do this? I put in for it a week ago. You just put in for it." Yes, well, I've been here longer than you, So you learn, what they bargained for in a contract with seniority and other things that made it. Again, it was good. It was good.
Right. So you were seeking that out, or did someone come to you right when you started, or did you contact? Did you ask around? Like how did the application get? Because this is a paper application, right? So how did it end up in your hand for you to?
Yeah, I went online after people told me about it. I went online once I knew I was going to be here. Beyond, just the contracts or whatever. I did the management thing at Kaiser briefly. And I would rather be in a pension system or whatever. And so I applied and got an interview, was hired. Like I said, the prison health system was in peril at the time. So it made sense that with my skills and my array of skills and longevity in the profession that they just hired me on right then. So, yeah, paper process, online, got a call, set for an interview panel, only one. I hear sometimes there's like two or whatever, one interview panel, then an offer probably at the end of that interview that same day was like, when could you start if we were by the way, if we call you back today, when could you start? It was just
Right.
yeah.
So Ron, you started working with the state. You became a member right as you came on board, and then there about a decade later, you put in some time to become a steward. Tell us about that journey. Did you want to be a steward for a long time? What finally kind of pushed you to put more work into the union and inspired you to start becoming a steward and advocating as a labor leader?
So I came to my current department in '08 after you all are freezing. Am I freezing? Just you all are freezing.
Just you, yeah.
Okay. So I came into state, came into the department I'm in now in '08 after starting at San Quentin. I transferred over to CDPH in '08. And having had situations at San Quentin, and some of them are legal in nature. I'll just say there was litigation, and that because the stewards were not at that time doing what they needed to do. So I, beckoned the union that I had been subjected to lack of zealous representation by stewards. And so there were 4 nurses at the time that were bringing, it's kind of an uncomfortable situation to talk about. So there were 4 nurses at the time that had a legal case, and we ended up seeking outside counsel to resolve our matters, but the union indemnified us, paid our attorney retainer fees and different things because they had dropped the ball, and because I was pervasive to say you dropped the ball.
Yeah.
So many emails here, so many emails where I ask your steward to come and help me, and I'm paying dues and blah 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 blah. I wrote the legal department of SEIU. We sat before an indemnification panel. The panel agreed that the union had been negligent to represent us zealously, and they helped us with indemnity money to retain outside attorney fees. That went on. We settled out of court with that case, so we were successful in a settlement there, and I moved on to the department I'm at now. And in that department, I worked with stewards and organizers and represent labor reps, and always advocated for my colleagues. And I was the one in the staff meeting saying, "Oh, but you can't do that. Oh, but no, you can't." Calling the stewards. Do you know we had a staff meeting today, and they were like, "Ron, you need to be a steward, dude. You like it's in your nature. It's like." You're already doing the work, So I was an activist by just who I am, just by who I am. Being the humanitarian I am, the advocate for people, the seeker of justice and equity and, parity and all those things. It's just innate.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So
Great.
you got to become a steward in 2016. You're currently the DLC president of your DLC.
Yeah.
So when did you become DLC? Was that also in 2016?
No, actually, I'm in my first DLC presidency. So, 3 years ago? How long did we sit?
At the last elections.
The last elections, yeah.
Okay, so you'll be running for re-election in this.
Yeah, and running in the first election was a colleague submitting my name for me, and I didn't campaign or do anything. They submitted my name. It was, people. I believe that you've heard me say this: do the work, and the title will find you. Do the work, and the title will find you. Bays, I've said that to you before. I'm a proponent of the fact that you don't need to. It's good for us to have these positions and titles, but if we're doing the work, it'll find us. We'll land where we're supposed to land. So
someone put your name in. You decided to accept the victory and swear in as a DLC president and advocate for the next 3 years. So then, what made you want to run again? Did you put your name in this time? What made you?
I put my name in this time because I guess they helped me believe that I was the person for the job. Not only that, I mean, I could have even campaigned for a higher position or whatever, but I believe that where I am now there's some unfinished business, and I believe there's things to be won within that DLC, things that we're advocating for. Yeah. So I put my in this time, and am looking to lead our DLC to great, to higher heights in the union, more things that different of the bargaining units need, need done. They're better working conditions. We're in the midst of a transition out of this pandemic. What does return to work look like if we return to work? I feel that if I'm in a position to help foster my colleagues back into a safe working environment post-pandemic, we're in a crucial place in history, and with this pandemic, like we've not seen the likes of one in our lifetime. I know that have so many casualties, so many cases at our various work sites. Every week as a DLC president, I was getting emailed letters of, you have this many cases on this campus, that campus, whatever. And many of our staff members were affected by this pandemic. Nurses were told to, at the top of the pandemic, you didn't ask me about it, but the work conditions were bad. We were told to go into a war zone with surgical masks when we knew, there were particulates and airborne and other. We knew better than we needed a surgical mask, but our higher up management are not medical. They're managing and directing medical staff, but they're not medical. Our deputy director at the time was an English major. The hell are you telling me to go into a red zone pandemic skilled nursing facility with a surgical mask on? It kill me and bring diseases home to my family.
So Ron, is that one of your major goals when you win re-election, is to ensure that there's a safe transition for your nurses and your other employees in your DLC?
Yes, it is. That's one of the foremost. We're most people in even my department. I work there at the campus in Richmond, and we house so many state entities, be it CLIA, CDPH, LNC, cannabis. We house like so many on 3 floors of state employees, and the building's desolate right now. So is it gonna continue that way, or are they coming back? Or, and if they do come back, the union gets to have a say in those terms, how they come back, when they come back, what conditions, how will we look at the progression of the pandemic? Will it be totally eradicated when we come back, or, and it started with ensuring that We had weekly, us as healthcare professionals have weekly testing there on the work site. We were privy to vaccinations, and we advocated. Initially, the state didn't offer us that. We had to go to the county public health to get vaccines, and that, the state didn't say, you work for us, we're going to vaccinate you. We sought out, our supervisors didn't have the link. One of our nurses found the link and published it to all of us and say, I found a place we can go get vaccinated. It was like our doing, and maybe we'll get into this in a minute, but I had emailed and texted our SEIU president in the midst of a pandemic, being a nurse, asking her, begging her, can we converge a health and safety committee? Can we have a COVID task force? I told her what I thought that would look like in my mind, because I thought we should be talking to management and places. I had a steward walk into a place that looked like a crime scene on our campus. I was home one day and she's like, Ron, yellow tapes everywhere, by the restrooms, by the break room. What are they doing here? And I said, well, you're a steward. Let them know you're a steward. Walk over there. And she's like, the chemicals are very strong in here today. And she walks over there and they tell her to go back to work, shoo her away. I said, go back and tell them you're a steward. You have a right to know if the people in that building are safe, find the facilities management, and she went back, but she was subjected to these chemicals, as was several of our employees during the pandemic, just they're cleaning during the day while people are there because there was exposure going on. And we found out they should have not even been there. But these are the health and safety concerns that she ended up with chemical burns in her lungs and 3 months off work.
Wow.
So these are the things that we should really be ensuring that our colleagues are safe. Nurses, there are horror stories with nurses developing. I had a group of nurses. What we do is go in and survey hospitals, nursing homes, ambulatory surgery centers, every medical kind of situation you could think of. We are licensing them and surveying them and making sure they run according to state and federal regulations. So there was a team in San Francisco in a hospital during the pandemic, and the department called them and tell them, some of the patients that you have interviewed just tested positive for COVID. Can you get the team out of there right now? And then some of those people on the team ended up, being subjected to that. And so it was deplorable, at which time I called our president and it was like, we got it, but we've never conversed the health and safety committee. I've been on a steward call where some of the stewards were like, oh, well, the state has a health and safety committee in my department or whatever. So you're relying on your employer to be the end all be all of, and you're not part of that conversation. That's not right. That's not good.
So the pandemic started in deplorable working conditions. It could be described as a war zone in some cases. You're asked to be thrown into high risk situations with a surgical mask, that there's public guidance saying that wasn't enough. Where are we at today in all this? Or are we still in war zone situations with surgical masks? Are we a step better? What does it kind of look like today?
What it looks like today is we're in N95s, which we should have been at that time. And facilities now are just like your traffic light. red, yellow, green. Red for known COVID patients are housed in this part of a nursing home. Maybe patients that have been tested or maybe having signs and symptoms, may have been exposed to somebody in red, they're yellow. And then those that are no asymptomatic, no risk factors, no symptoms, they're in the green area. Now patients in nursing homes are getting vaccinated. They were part of the first, phase one, as was us healthcare professionals. So we're now working with vaccinated colleagues, with in some cases, vaccinated residents and patients. But in a general acute care hospital where the mean age isn't over 50, in a general acute care hospital, you can have, your child could be there or whatever. We don't have those safeguards that the residents or the patients are vaccinated. So
I guess another way of that.
Maybe the battle isn't that intense. Maybe we're not dealing with the nuke stuff right now,
Right. No, another way, I guess, of asking, just for the listeners, what would you give at a 0 to 10 scale? What would you give the safety score, or, how comfortable the nurses feel, back then in these, say last April versus today? Like, are we up there? Do you feel, are nurses feeling, a 9 out of 10 in terms of how safe they feel doing their job? Are you feeling lower than that? Where are we kind of at right now?
I think nurses are between 8 and 10 with safety, because nurses, it's a loaded question. I think we feel 8 to 10 because of our efforts and because of our advocacy for ourselves. We organized, as you know, we have a statewide United HEPN, a group of us that meet, and we organize with no help of the state, with no help of the union, but knowing that organizing would give us connectivity, communication, power, information. How's that working for you all in your office? Oh, they piloted it in your office. Tell us how that works there. So because of our concerted efforts and our advocating for ourselves, we feel safer today because we stood our ground. We were able to say statewide, no, we're not going into any facility. Oh, are you being insubordinate? If you want to call it that, I think OSHA would call it, we're being safe. I think because we stood our ground and said no, absolutely not, and pushed back and didn't do it in one office. We did it statewide. So we're like, do you want none of us to go to work today? Do you want to fire like the whole, department, or do you want to look at, the safeguards? And then a week later, CMS or somebody published something that's right along with what we were saying. And we're like, you see this letter? A week ago, you would have killed us, and I'm glad we didn't go. You see this? Yeah. But there's still some ambiguity based with regards to it being deemed aerosolized, we're trying to now, the CDC and CMS and those need to come clean with the effects of this disease. It lasted a long time. We know because all of America should be wearing N95s. Nobody, the bandana in the grocery store is not working. It's not doing anything to eradicate COVID. It does prevent spittle or whatever from going on somebody, but an airborne aerosolized virus. We're trying to get them to admit what they did at one time during the Trump administration, and 3 days later came back and retracted that because the commander-in-chief didn't want that said, that it was aerosolized. So yeah, we're safe. We feel 8 to 10 because of our having N95s and the proper gear for war, proper artillery for war. Yeah, yeah. So
Right?
So, do you- if you could identify, one big next step in terms of the COVID response that the state has had in relation to its workers at these sites that you want to make a goal, is there anything specific you want to push for to get
just
that to a 10 out of 10 for everybody?
with regards to the pandemic and handling this,
Yeah.
uh,
Is it a communication problem, Ronald? Because it seems that when you, as a DLC president, you go to the union and there's a communication breakdown there, and then there's a communication breakdown between the state and the union. So it's like a triangle of different interests trying to come together, and you're kind of fighting two battles with our union leadership and our state government leadership. So is it really a
yeah,
communication
that's
issue?
exactly what I was gonna say. Some of what makes the fight so cumbersome and tiring is that you feel like you should be part of the you should have the backing of of your union, but in some cases it seems like we're fighting two ills. We have a disjointed union right now, and we have a state entity that sometimes are behind the time with what we should be doing, and we're having to we have management in some cases that and we're fighting a lot of ills. I'll just say it like that. And it seems as if we're the middle person, but we're the only ones advocating for our safety and our health and safety. Does the state listen eventually? In these cases, kudos to the state. They listen. They did better when they learned better. We helped them learn better. Um, they're practicing, they're listening to the powers that be, CDC, CMS, OSHA at this time. And I'm glad that that's the road we're taking now. So our last feed is, us unilaterally recognizing this is aerosolized and a way that we'll treat this as we come and back into our workplaces and back into cubicle spaces. And
I guess to kind of bridge this more specifically back to the union. So there, the state was asking, dangerous working conditions, hey, go risk your lives. The union wasn't necessarily sounded like there to have your back, but the Heffen stepped up, organized, and kind of created their own safety protocols. You mentioned that there isn't a health and safety committee that, isn't activated. It isn't a policy file, but it's not activated. So overall, would you assess this to be that the union just has some minor course corrections to make, or would you say that we're headed in the wrong direction?
well, you guys work with the union. I think it's dual, both. I think both. I think any leadership that didn't see during a pandemic when the numbers have been what we've seen and what they are today, even in the midst of vaccines, we're achieving some herd immunity, but the numbers are still bad. People are still dying in the thousands every day, still cases, Any union that doesn't see that as a health and safety situation We can have a health and safety GLMC. We can have a health and safety committee. We can even converge a COVID task force, like I said, where you have people of different disciplines, your IT people, your nurses, your custodians, your everybody saying, how are we going to all be safe during this? Even just to, we've had situations where the conditions have not been great while nurses were pushed home to telework. Some of them were pushed home to telework with a house full of kids and a spouse that was teleworking, not enough rooms to have two computers and to be able to talk, and the kids doing homework and everything. You're now playing school teacher, nurse, the lunchroom lady, our man, and then, what did our union do when, in the midst of a pandemic? It's loaded, because in the midst of a pandemic, we as nurses have, our department tried to, you didn't ask me about the unfair labor practice, but we're in the midst of one as a result of this. And it got there because they wanted us to lower the standards of our regulations during a pandemic. Why don't you just go in there and be consultants? Because the facilities are going through a lot right now. Well, this is where you don't want grandma to die. Why would we go in? And so they wanted us to go in and pretty much act as the duty statement that is in PERB right now, that they've gone through 4 revisions. Kudos to the HEFN, all the HEFN that got on calls and fought back and said, we're not doing that duty statement. Kudos to you, okay? In 4 revisions, 4. They gave us 1 revision. We said, no, we're not signing that. Not only are we not signing it, we're not doing it because it's illegal. Number 2, we're not doing that revision either. 3, you like this? No, we don't. No. 4, the 4th one is in PERB right now. And our union attorneys finally saw it our way and filed an unfair labor practice with PERB to protect us from, these atrocious asks at the time when we need to strengthen and be more stringent with what we're doing to eradicate infection and to stop death and destruction. They wanted us to lower our, just go in and kind of, instead of slapping them with citations and fines and deficiencies, just go and put your hand on, and tell them how to do it, and it'll be okay. We're not to wear 2 hats enforcement, and there's a law, Nursing Home Reform Act of 1987, that says that we can't wear 2 hats at one time. We can't do enforcement, but then be there as a consultant and a teacher and an educator, because
it's a conflict.
Now and say, hey, why don't you house these people right here and do this and do that? And then my colleague surveyor come here next week and say, hey, you're doing things wrong. Well, Ron said last week, So no, the union we didn't converge a health and safety committee. We had 2 PLP days thrown at us in the midst of the pandemic. So now, how does that affect us as healthcare professionals? We're not in the hospitals and nursing homes 2 extra days of the month when we need more help. Now people are dying, and they can say, oh, those nurses are on leave for, more time. How are you an essential worker? But, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're running for DLC 746 president. You'd mentioned that earlier that the reason you wanted to run for that position, intentionally this time, was because there was still more work to be done. So can you describe a little bit of that work that you still want to do in that DLC? And to refresh all the listeners, that DLC covers specifically Oakland, Richmond, Concord, and Pittsburgh area, right?
Yeah. And it's DLC 746. We have DMVs, we have EDDs. So you understand that DMV is totally doing business another way right now. And are they going to resume business as usual? EDD has worked tirelessly to get us unemployment for all of California, and we have EDD buildings under my auspices. We have SCIF, State Compensation Insurance Fund, which oversaw a lot of our COVID exposures. So all of them are in critical mode. And then we have, of course, all the departments where I am that we're out doing surveillance and enforcement. And those people have to come back to work. We have things with our bargaining unit 4 that that was pre-pandemic. Things related to call center pay, them not getting some of the things that we were advocating for. But now that they're home, those things were put on the back burner. But when we resumed to the workplace, there's some things that were in play, in our particular DLC, in our particular bargaining unit, we have a conflict of interest factor that we need to eradicate. And that's that we survey prisons, the state facilities section of HEFN, Health Facility Evaluator Nurses, HEFN. They survey nurses in the prisons that are part of bargaining unit 17. So you can, in actuality, be interviewing and writing a citation or deficiency against a nurse who's in your same bargaining unit and sitting with them in a rally next week in the same room, in the same union. And it's a gross conflict of interest that the union needs to address. And we've started some of that work. And some of that work is still continuing. And our duty statement back in the state is unfinished business. We have an unfair labor practice. Now is it the time to change leadership and take our foot off the neck of, the people who are trying to do this. We're in the midst of a settlement conference in a couple of weeks, literally. So we, at the same time elections are going on, we'll be in some of the settlement phase of this unfair labor practice situation. So there's some unfinished business that we need to get done. Yeah.
What are your biggest barriers right now as a DLC president?
Biggest barriers is having the backing of the union when we need it. Having, for instance, a lot of our, let me speak for BU17, a lot of them throughout the state are in buildings where they don't see union people. It just so happened that in my building, and I've advocated not just my building, but a couple other places where we have union stewards in those buildings that are helping people. And then when we are helping, we sometimes don't see organizers or labor reps like we should, unless we call them because we're going into an informal grievance conference or something, then they will show up. But to just be a part of the everyday Not that they have to be there every day, but in some rotation. So I think that's some of the barrier, having the backing of the union. Like I said, with this unfair labor practice and 4 duty statement revisions, the union finally got on board and say, okay, you all are fighting a worthwhile fight, but it took us to start the fight. The union didn't start the fight. They joined the fight. But I'd like to be a part of a union that will start the fight and protect me so I can go back to work. We had to take time off of our schedules with our family, our evenings. We're on calls away from our families, our weekends, just to get this unfair labor practice. We organized. We were on calls all of our weekends and evenings, saying, looking up laws, contacting the Board of Registered Nurses, looking up the Nurse Practice Act and how the duty statements, violated those things. So the biggest barrier to me is having the help when we need it. And then, of course, eradicating those conflicts of interest we talked about. Yeah.
So Ron, it sounds like so you're saying the biggest barrier to you is the union's main office and you having that direct support from our top union leadership. As a DLC president, you get to attend the board of directors meetings. Have those been an avenue for you to actually get some headway on some of your issues that you see in the DLC and the union at large, or have you met resistance there as well? Kind of talk to your experience at the table, as they say.
Let me go to your former question, because some heaven probably wouldn't appreciate me not saying one of the barriers is pay parity and all that stuff. So there's a lot of barriers, back to your formal question. But I think, we do have a pay parity that we, when you were saying what do we need to finish, some of the things that we're working on. People don't realize that when you're working in the union in Stewart as an activist, these things, DLC president, any other office, you can't become part of management. So as a tenured employee with the state, as many years as I've been with the state in my position, there are people that sometimes supervise me and manage me that I should be managing. Okay. And that's because of the sacrifice that of us saying out, when the managers say, Ron, you want to apply for this promotion coming up? I mean, we have 4 open positions right now at my job that I qualify for. But so people don't understand it. You're giving up all of that to stay in the fight, to advocate. So some of the barriers with pay parity, and some of the managers understand at my job when I say I'll apply for that position after the next bargaining or sometime after we get what we need. There's still some unfinished business. So, but to your later question, with the board of directors, I said in the genesis of this conversation that there is the union is disjointed. I think I said disjointed. There's a disconnect. There's an infight. There's and so there's division. All those DIs right there. So there's division, and so when you go, it's kind of where our country is right now. And so when you go into a place where we know what's in law, there's something called the reasonable person concept, right? And we know what's reasonable. You think things would just pass on a board of directors because it's reasonable? It just makes sense to the average person. That's not what we're dealing with there. We're dealing with we're dealing with a system of complacency, complicitness, and wanting to be in the minion crowd or the in crowd, wanting to be popular with the leadership rather than the members, advocating for your members. And we've had members even say, I wrote my president and they better not vote against this or whatever. And I send an email to and I sit there and watch their president vote right down, right against their will. So are we voting the will of the people? Are we, we're
Yeah,
not.
that brings up the important point of having the makeup of the board, reflect the will of the members, which is part of the reason we're doing this show, right? Is we want to highlight these contested races. In full disclosure, you are in a contested race against someone, and that person is welcome on the podcast as well. But we want to highlight these kind of races and these issues to hopefully the members pick the right board members, of which every DLC president's a board member. So picking the right person, obviously you believe that's you in this case, and then hopefully reforming the way the board works and the way the board operates. So that is some of our intention, is to bring your opinions and your views to the people. Something you just touched on that really kind of brought up something that I guess in my mind that I wanted to talk about and ask you a little bit was the sacrifice that it takes to be a DLC president, to fight, to have these meetings, to organize your people, to, go to the board meetings, to prepare for board meetings. All of this is voluntary and free. Do you think that there should be some form of compensation for stewards, whether that be, maybe the idea of stewards not paying union dues, or maybe stewards getting some sort of stipend for their efforts, or do you believe that, we have the proper model in terms of 100% compensation without support, or is there something more that we can and should be doing for stewards in order to not only support the ones that we got like you, but to attract, new ones?
That's a great question. Our union have made the word stipend kind of a bad term because it's been abused. I'm a proponent for like bonuses and merit-based bonuses, even for statewide offices. I wouldn't support a stipend, but if you do this, that, and that for us, and you say you're going to do this, that, and that, and you accomplish that, I think we should give you a bonus in year 1 or year 2 or whatever. And based on your ability to do, and that would mean that you don't just get in an office, sit there and collect the stipend without having to do anything. You don't work, you don't get paid. You don't work, you don't get the stipend, you don't get the bonus. Same way with DLC presidents, and that I would advocate for us to have incentives. We're trying to advocate that we can get a credit card and not pay out of our own pocket. For my DLC, I had to go and buy a computer out of my family's Christmas money and a printer and all that, because I couldn't see on my phone to do, and people were sending me their expense Excel spreadsheets for expenses. I'm like on my phone, Ron, did you approve my claim? I can't see it. It's in what file is this? So you have to spend your own money, wait to be reimbursed. I haven't used union leave time because we have one person approving union leave that it takes an act of God to get the 16 hours of union leave that's afforded you. So I'm just take my lunch break and go to another work site to see what's going on, because the union won't work with us to help us help people. And so, yeah, I would love that my family's resources are not used. We're advocates in that, but we should not lose in the home front when we're already taking away from them time away from dad and all of that. And then you take away our money and our resources, and then dad gets home and he has to talk on the phone, because you don't give him time during the workday to handle union issues. It's a lot. But it's a sacrifice, and hopefully the way the union will go, futuristically speaking, will address some of these anomalies and atrocities. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully, treat our stewards as good or better than we expect, us to be treated by the state.
Right.
We definitely, I don't think we should ever allow the state to make us give them, interest-free loans. And I think the union, not to get into my opinion too much, but the union shouldn't do the same, right? Should practice what we preach.
Right.
So in that regard, yeah. Frank?
Yeah, I think even members that are working with the union zealously. I've had members sign up 5, 10 people in their department, bring me the membership cards. What if we rewarded that member every time they sign somebody up? It may be a Starbucks gift card, it may be something, but they're bringing members to the union. We should have incentives embedded, but in our current structure, it seems that only certain people get these stipends and get the treatment, and they're the end all be all of all decisions. And we're in a bad place right now.
Frank, anything else before we wrap?
Not on that issue. No.
Okay, I would say, we are running close to the time at this point, but there was a few things we still wanted to get to. Not that we have to do rapid fire or anything. But I know that you said that there was a couple things you wanted to address specifically. Hopefully we were able to address a couple of those things in this hour. But in the last few minutes, is there anything that we left off that you wanted to make sure the voters know either about you or about what you advocate for, or parts of the contract that you do or don't agree with, or anything?
Well, yeah, I think in gist, it could be summed up in a couple ways. First of all, we have a member-led mantra that I'd like us to get back to where the members actually are driving the union. And I think when we are doing things for the members, it's like President Biden saying, let's do this for the people. It should be bipartisan then, because put down your political views, put down how you feel about, people are in trouble. And I think the same thing here in our union. We really need to get it back to member focus. We're losing members. Since the Janus decision, I thought we would get better. Now that people don't have to be a part of the union, things got worse. And so I'd like to say that. And as far as the DLC, in my DLC, let's finish. My motto has been, let's finish what we've started. We've started and we're on a good road. I think you've seen the changes in our DLC. You've seen we've started having the worksite meetings and engaging the members, listening to their voices. And that was something that wasn't happening at the level that it's happening pre-pandemic. Now we're getting back to it, having our next worksite meeting in April. So let's finish what we started. And you know who I am. I'm not one to toot my horn, but I'm open when members come by my cubicle from wherever on our campus, a call to make sure that if I don't have the answer, I get the answer that they need and connect them to the right people. So get out and vote. It's the biggest thing. We need members to vote. And, don't just sit there and say somebody else is going to vote and you don't like the results of the election. Get out and vote and listen to what the candidates are saying, really listen to them. So that's all I had. I didn't really have anything else.
Awesome. Yeah.
Our unfair labor practice charge. We may have, support us in that. We'll be going, we'll be having our hearing on the 14th of April. So keep us in your prayers, everybody.
Okay. So yeah, we're, obviously advocating to vote for you, and, check out if you want to do any last minute promotion? If you don't know if you have a web page, or if you have a
Just
phone call, or other people you want to support, you can do that now.
yeah, I've been posting my stuff on the Reform page and also on my personal Facebook page, Ronald Rosson, Rosson. And I'll say that we have other colleagues that are running for office that hopefully will come on this podcast and speak for themselves. But yeah, support us, and yeah, see you there.
Well, Ron, thank you very much for coming on. I think when people listen to this, they'll see that you've identified the problems in this union, that there's a communication breakdown. You're doing your best to bridge that. And even when you don't have the support, you're working for your DLC and you're working for their health and safety. And that's a big thing you're going to continue to work on and have their backs on. So thank you for coming on and speaking about that, and speaking for our labor, for our civil servants.
For sure. Thank you all. Thank you for having me. And good luck to you, Robert Bays, on your vice presidency of bargaining. Yeah.
Thank you.
Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to our listeners as well. If you would like to come on the show, we'd like to have you come on if you're a candidate. And if you'd like to talk shop with us, email us at talkshop1000@gmail.com. And for anyone else listening, if you're a union member, a member of SEIU, like this video, share it, and move it around the union. Let's get people talking about our candidates. Let's get people talking about the election and getting interested, signing up so we can vote, because we hear a lot of people complain about the direction of things, but you got to cast your vote. You got to make a difference.
Thanks, Ron.